Hello, what's going on, guys? Welcome back for another show. Today I'm going to show you a fantasy film, The Tale of Tales. In a kingdom during a circus, the king is happily enjoying the show, while the queen seems depressed much, for that she cannot conceive a child for the successor of the kingdom. Touched by the actress, who displays her pregnancy for the show, the queen gets very upset and leaves the show to her palace, where she bursts into anger and makes her place a total mess up. The king has to show her some comforts and apologies. In the middle of night, a necromancer in black robe pays a visit to the palace. He tells the king and queen that a new life in nature only comes at the cost of an existing life, meaning that the pregnancy of the queen has to be paid by killing a sea monster in return. The queen can get pregnant soon after she eats the heart cut off of the sea monster and cooked by a virgin. So as to fulfill the queen's long-dwelling dream for a child, the king, armed with diving suit, decides to head into the deep sea, hunting for the sea monster. The king soon locates the white sea monster, while it's sleeping in the dead silent sea. The king takes the great chance to stab injure the sea monster. By accident, the king is hit badly by its long tail. But he endures the great pains and draws the white sea monster up to the beach, where the soldiers cut off a giant heart, which is still alive and beating despite of being separated from its body. However, the poor king dies from his badly wounds. The queen then takes the heart back to her palace. Following what's been told by the necromancer, the queen orders a virgin maid to cook the heart for her. During the processing, the maid feels ill out of nowhere. She's so frightened to see her belly growing bigger and bigger. The queen later eats up the whole heart. Within expectation, the next day she bears a son. At the same time, the virgin maid also gives birth to a boy. During a funeral of the dead king, the queen seems to only care about her newly born baby, rather than tribute the sacrificed king. 6 years later, the baby grows up to be a handsome prince of the kingdom. On the day he plays hide and seek in the maze with the queen, he happens to meet his identical and inseparable friend, the son who's born by the virgin maid. They leave the maze together, which makes the queen really upset. She orders the soldiers to search out for the prince. Later, the queen warns the maid and her son to step away from the prince. The maid has to obey the order. Prince wants to challenge his mother to show some mercy on the poor maid. But he's told poor and humbles are not allowed to get in touch with the celebrities in this kingdom, which means that he cannot maintain a friendship with the maid's son again. One day night, when the prince is choosing jewelry for the queen, she smells some difference from the prince, who is actually the maid's son in the prince's clothes, and mistaken by the queen. When knowing the queen cannot even tell the difference out of them both, the prince feels enlightened, and turns to propose that they make turns to be the prince. However, this is overheard by the queen. Before the queen breaks into the room, they quickly change back to their clothes. Surprisingly, the queen comes inside but remains silent about their secrets. Nevertheless, on the way back, the poor boy is attempted with murder by the queen, but luckily he's hidden safe. The other day, when the prince is sitting for the painting with his mother, he sees his identical friend is leaving the kingdom and farewelling the family. He rushes up to his friend and asks for why. But the maid's son doesn't want to tell the prince with the attempted murder. As a farewell, the boy brings the prince to a big tree, plunging a knife into a tree root, and telling the prince that, as long as the root spouts clear water, he is alive and well. The prince keeps coming to check the water, and finds someday that the water is clouded with blood. The prince leaves for the woods to find his friend immediately. The queen has her soldiers search for prince, but to no avail. Without any choice, she turns to the necromancer for help, who blames the queen, and says the two are truly inseparable, and warn her that her violent desire can only be achieved through violence. On the other side, the maid's son is wounded in a cave, screaming for help, which arouses the prince's attention. But the boy is soon threatened by a monster. He tries to hide in a narrow cave against the monster. Luckily, before the monster launches its deadly attack on the boy, the prince shows up and protects his wounded friend with his own body. The monster hesitates to attack the prince, who takes the chance and kills the monster. The prince finally returns the poor boy to his home for safe. While back into the cave, the monster's corpse dissolves into that of the queen. It turns out, the queen chooses to change into the monster, in order to kill the maid's son for the separation. But in the end, she gets herself killed by her violent desire. This is Daniel CC Movie Review. Bye.